Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Army senior leaders.
How you doing?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Family Forum 4.
We sit down?
Oh, please sit down.
Okay, all right.
That's why I'm not in the Army. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Family Forum 4, the Army Senior Leaders Town Hall. Whether you are here in the audience or watching the live streaming, I'm very glad that you joined us today. This promises to be a very, very important forum. At this time, I would like to recognize our sponsor for the event, the Wounded Warrior Project. The support Wounded Warrior Project provides to our service members and their families is truly outstanding, thanks in large part to the inspired leadership and passion of their CEO, Lieutenant General Retired Michael Lennington. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Michael Lennington.
Thanks, everyone, and thank you especially to AUSA for once again honoring Wounded Warrior Project with the opportunity to sponsor this afternoon's Army Senior Leaders Town Hall. It's also great to be back with the United States Army. Hooah, Army strong. And among friends who my wife and I have known for more than 40 years, and it truly is for me a homecoming. In General McConville's initial message to the Army a few weeks ago, he highlighted people being the most important resource, and at the very top of his priorities as Chief of Staff. And I think you heard the same thing from the Secretary of the Army throughout this week and the Sergeant Major of the Army, with readiness, modernization, reform, and probably 70 other priorities coming behind people. I applaud that prioritization, and I agree. Taking care of people has guaranteed our Army's success for more than 244 years, just as it does today, and I'd argue it is what will define our success in the future. The demands on soldiers and families have rarely been as important as they've been, and certainly as ponderous, I would say, as they've been over the last 18 years. And that's why we are all committed to focusing on the important issues affecting soldiers and their families. Like the Army, caring for people is our highest priority at Wounded Warrior Project. Our people being our nation's wounded, ill, and injured service members, their families, and their caregivers, and with every other priority coming in second. The programs and services we offer across our nation to tens of thousands of wounded warriors and their families, 70% of whom are Army, Army Guard, and Army Reserve, from nearly 700 full-time employees in 25 locations, and thousands of volunteers and supporters focus on peer-to-peer engagement, a continuum of mental health care programs and services, focusing on traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, suicide prevention, and stigma reduction, physical health and wellness programs like sleep, weight loss, nutrition, cycling, exercise, and adaptive sports. It's great to see Dr. Cooper here with us this morning. Thank you, Rory. And benefits, career counseling, job placement, and finally, in-home care for those that have suffered some of our nation's more grievous injuries and require the home of caregiving in their homes. We deliver these programs at no cost to veterans and service members because we know they've paid their dues on the battlefield. We also perform our mission in conjunction with many partner organizations, most in this room. Thank you for your partnership, and certainly with the help of the Department of VA and the Department of Defense. Well, I know you didn't come here to listen to me, so let me thank you all for the opportunity to sponsor today's event, be back to my Army family, and turn it back over to Patty Bear. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mike. Next, I would like to bring up to the stage the 2019 AUSA Volunteer Family of the Year, all the way from United States, Europe, the Elwine family. You'll come up. And I would also like the Army senior leaders to join the Elwine family on stage, please. The Elwine family consists of Sergeant Major Diane Elwine, United States Army National Guard, Chief Warrant Officer 4 Frederick L. Wine, United States Army retired, and First Lieutenant Caitlin L. Wine, United States Air Force. Unfortunately, Austin and Tyler L. Wine were unable to join us today. They had to get back to school. And First Lieutenant L. Wine is stationed in Japan, and I think there was a monsoon or something like that, a typhoon, that kind of got in the way of her travel plans. But together, the L. Wine family has assessed more than 4,400 hours of volunteer work in their communities, and they are an incredible family that represents Army values. So at this point, I'd like to present the L. Wine family with a basket from AUSA Family Readiness, just to thank you for all that you've done.
Wow, look at that. Wow.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I got it.
You got it?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Give your best to our daughter, too, okay? I give her a coin for her. Give her that coin, so. Okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's it. Okay.
And as the L. Wine family takes their really big basket back to their seats, we'll ask our senior leaders to have a seat, please. Next, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Lieutenant General Jason Evans, the Deputy Chief of Staff for Installations G9. Lieutenant General Evans is the Principal Advisor to Army senior leaders on installation policy, plans, and resources, which includes housing, childcare, and other soldier and family programs. Installations serve as the Army's foundation and support the readiness and well-being of soldiers, civilians, families, and soldiers for life. And at this time, I would like to bring Lieutenant General Evans up on stage.
Good afternoon. Let's give Patty a round of applause for all of the hard work she's done on the Family Forums. Now I'd like to recognize an extremely important group of people, the Army Survivor Advisory Working Group. This group meets annually to make recommendations on how the Army can best support surviving families. Chaired by the Chief of Staff of the Army, this group is comprised of key Army leaders and survivor advisors from all of the components of the Army. These survivor advisors best understand the challenges faced and sacrifices made by our Army families, as each has lost a soldier, whether it be their child or their spouse. They remain advocates for survivor needs in their communities. Survivor advisors provide invaluable insight to Army leadership. Their courage and resilience results in continued survivor benefits, education, awareness, improvements which affect quality of life for approximately 250,000 survivors. The advisors also champion an enhancement to the casualty assistance officers and casualty notification officers training, which benefits not only our survivors, but those soldiers called upon to perform that vital mission. Our Survivor Advisory Work Group members inspire us all to sacrifice and work diligently for the good of the United States. Today, we recognize the departing members of the SAWG who, in spite of their personal losses, and share their perspective and their experience to improve survivor quality of life. At this time, I'd like to ask the Secretary of the Army, the Chief, and the Sergeant Major of the Army to join us in the presentation of the awards. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated for the duration of the award citations. Will Ms. Jane Horton please come to the forward? The Secretary of the Army Public Service Award is presented to Ms. Jane Horton for exceptionally meritorious service while serving as a member of the Army Survivor Advisory Working Group from August 2015 through October 2019. Ms. Horton served with exemplary courage and resilience following her husband's death. Specialist Christopher Horton. Ms. Horton's service reflects great credit upon her, the Survivor Advisory Working Group, and the United States Army. Signed, Ryan D. McCarthy, Secretary of the Army. Thank you, Ms. Horton. Would Ms. Candy Martin please come forward? The Secretary of the Army Public Service Award is presented to Ms. Candy Martin for her exceptionally meritorious service while serving as a member of the Army Survivor Advisory Working Group from August 2015 through October 2019. Ms. Martin served with exemplary courage, resilience following the death of her son, First Lieutenant Tom Martin. Ms. Martin's service reflects great credit upon her, the Survivor Advisory Working Group, and the United States Army. Signed, Ryan D. McCarthy, Secretary of the Army. Thank you, Ms. Martin. Would Colonel Rebecca Eggers please come forward? The Military Outstanding Volunteer Service Medal is awarded to Colonel Rebecca Eggers for exceptionally meritorious service while serving as a member of the Army's Advisory Working Group from August 2015 through October 2019. Colonel Eggers served with exemplary courage, resilience following her husband's death, Captain Daniel Eggers. Colonel Eggers' service reflects great credit upon her, the Survivor Advisory Working Group, and the United States Army. Signed, Ryan D. McCarthy, Secretary of the Army.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Colonel Eggers. At this time, we would like to invite all the SAWG members to quickly come to the stage and get a photo shoot with the Army senior leaders.
Just stay there. We'll populate it. We'll kind of, yeah. Okay. Oh, right here. Or not.
Yeah.
Get up front here. Get up front there. Get up front there. See if I'm tall enough to fill in here. I may have to need a stool here for me.
Which way is Lieutenant Plumley?
Great.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
It's a great honor to be here as your moderator for this year's AUSA Army Senior Leader Town Hall. Family members, be they spouses, children, parents, or siblings, are the strength of our soldiers. They stand side by side with them, providing comfort, support, and unconditional love. Army families make selfless contributions to strengthen our brave warriors and the nation's defense. They play an important part in the mission readiness. The Army is committed to providing the care, support, and services necessary to enable self-reliance and ensure a ready Army. At this time, I would like to introduce our Army senior leaders. The Honorable Ryan D. McCarthy is the 24th Secretary of the Army and is a soldier for life. Having served in the 75th Ranger Regiment, U.S. Army Special Operations Command, he holds a bachelor's degree from Virginia Military Institute and an MBA from the University of Maryland, Robert H. Smith School of Business. Secretary McCarthy and his wife Jennifer have one daughter, Alexandra. Secretary McCarthy and Jennifer, welcome and thank you for joining us here today. The 40th Chief of Staff of the Army, General James McConville, is also here to share his insights on his efforts to improve readiness and the quality of life programs for our soldiers, families, Army civilians, and soldiers for life. I also want to recognize his wife of 31 years, Maria McConville, who the Chief credits as his foundation and strength of family. I would be remiss if I didn't mention their three children, Captain Michael McConville, Captain Jessica Nazar, son-in-law Staff Sergeant Ryan Nazar, and their youngest son, Captain Ryan McConville. General McConville and Maria, thank you both for joining us here this afternoon. Finally, the 16th Sergeant Major of the Army, Sergeant Major of the Army Michael Grinston, with over 30 years of dedicated service holding every enlisted leadership position, brings his perspective on soldier and family support and its direct influence upon Army readiness. We are fortunate to have both the SMA and his wife, Alexandra. Together they work tirelessly to improve the readiness and quality of life for our total Army and champion the issues and concerns of all of our volunteer force. Sergeant Major of the Army Grinston and Alexandra, thank you both for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, the 40th Chief of Staff of the Army, General James McConville, will provide opening remarks.
Well, thank you. And can you bring up that first slide, if it's possible? Well, thanks for having us. And now, Maria, I know why you like those pillows on the couches here. As we we're scooting, we're trying to figure out how we do that. You know?
I need a stool.
Just say, I always kid her about that too. Why do we have all these pillows? Now I know why. You know. So, now first of all, thanks for all for coming out. And if you heard us, the Secretary and I speak, and the Sergeant Major speak, the Army is people. It's our most important weapon system. And when we talk about people, we're certainly talking about our soldiers from all three components. We're also talking about our families, our Department of the Army civilians, and we're talking about our soldiers for life, our retirees and veterans. And that's kind of what makes us the world's greatest Army, and that's what we want to maintain. And we're still going to have readiness, we're still going to have modernization, we're still going to have reform, but at least philosophically, we believe we get there through the people, so we have to take care of them. So we have come together and we've established 5 quality of life priorities, and they're listed up there. So housing is number 1, healthcare is number 2, child care and youth services is number 3, spouse employment is number 4, and PCS moves are number 5. So a lot of people go, so what's the big deal? Nice slide, PowerPoint, what does that do for us? And what it does is we're taking each of these areas and putting initiatives behind those, because we believe that we owe it to you to provide quality of life that's commensurate with really the quality of service. And it starts at the top is General Gus Perna. He's right over here, General Gus Perna. He's a 4-star. He is in charge of installations overall. And he is a committed senior leader that is really going to make a difference. So when we talk about housing, I'll start at housing. We have had some challenges with housing. I'll be straight up, and we're going to fix it. Okay, and when we talk about housing, we're talking about privatized housing, we're talking about Army housing, and we're talking about barracks for our soldiers. And we're going to invest in them, and we got to do a better job of fixing them. We put a lot of initiatives in place. We got over $500 million that's going into investment to fix our housing as far as new housing. We need to do a lot more than that. We want to not have M's. We want to get some B's on those numbers to fix the housing, to make sure we have that. We've spent well over almost $1 billion on barracks, and we're going to increase that because we got to increase the overall quality of our housing. You have all helped us by bringing to the attention of the chain of command where there are issues. We want to know that. And we meet with the CEOs of the privatized housing companies and have very, very candid conversations with them on what they need to do to provide the quality of housing that our families deserve. We made some changes. I say that old is not historical. Some of you, some of you have seen that. We have these old houses. We built houses that are so old, and because a sergeant and a captain live in a house that's 100 years old, it's not a historical place. We don't need to replace every piece of equipment in that house with the way it was 100 years ago, because they weren't good then and they're not good today, and we're spending a ton of money trying to keep those historical houses up. So if you're one of those historical houses, we're going to fix them, but we're going to fix them with glass from today. We're not going to go out and try to find some store that has old glass. We're not going to try to replace the way things were. We'll keep probably one of those houses, so we can say, hey, this is how captains or sergeants lived 100 years ago, and then the rest of them are going to get fixed, and we've got some authorities to do that. So we are also hiring people. They're going to make sure that if you have problems, they can come and check your housing and get with the privatized contractor to make sure that happens. We cut a lot of those type people, so we're going to do that. Healthcare, we are watching healthcare very, very, very carefully. And I want your feedback as we go through the process. There's a transition going on right now where I'm medical treatment facilities are being moved to the Defense Health Agency as part of a legislative requirement. And we just want to make sure that the care that our soldiers and families and retirees are getting does not degrade during that process. So, if you see a problem, come up to the chain of command. Our senior commanders are involved in that, and we want to watch that very, very carefully. Child care, over 50% of our soldiers are married and they have families. And we got to take care of them and make sure we have quality child care. So we're putting a lot of money into that. We're increasing the capacity. We're trying to reduce the wait list that we have, and we're going after that right now. Spousal employment. Many of our soldiers that are coming in to the Army have professional spouses. They work, and we know what happens. I think Maria and I have moved 22 times since we've been married, and every time she moves, she has to get her license and all those type things renewed. I know many of you go through those type things. We put some programs in place where we reimburse you for your licenses. We're trying to get to the point where you don't even have to renew them. Every license is good, and we're working with a lot of organizations that are working on spousal employment. The PCS moves. Again, you do enough of these moves, they have become a real challenge for our families, and we're doing some things on that as far as we're bringing the inspectors back in. So if the contractors aren't doing the move that we paid for, and that's what I kind of look at. A lot of these contractors, we're actually paying them the money to do it right. And we kind of expect them to do it right, but we're going to put quality inspectors in place to make sure that happens. One thing that we've put in place too is you'll get the dislocation allowance up front, which for a lot of the young families is a big deal, and we're going to make that happen. I want to throw out an idea. I'm not announcing it yet because we don't have authorities to do it, but give us some feedback. One of the things we're looking at is there's a challenge with moves. People will say, hey, during the summer, that's when the peak season is, so some people are talking about, hey, we'll move soldiers off peak. I don't sign up for that, okay? Because the reason people move during the summer, that's when the kids are coming out of school. So the only thing I sign up for is maybe less moves or stabilizing people longer, but we're not going to have the soldier moving in March and the kids getting pulled out of school. I don't support that. But one thing we've been thinking about is, what if we said to you, and I don't know how it's going to work out, is you're going to be able to do a Diddy move. No questions asked, and we give you 90% cash of what you would have gotten if you had gone through the whole moving company or something like that. I don't know. We're trying to figure out something, and you get your dislocation allowance, and you get 90% of your max weight for your whatever it is, and you go move. And if you want to do it, if not, you can go through the system, and I think we might be able to reduce moves for that. So those are just some things we're working on right now. I think we're going to open it up to some questions, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, we're going to open up for questions. As the chief said, we'll take questions alternatively from the group here as well as those streaming live over Facebook. As we get to questions, we have 2 rows here of SMEs. The SMEs will briefly address the policy that pertains to the particular question, and then you will hear from the Army senior leaders in terms of their perspective, direction, and guidance based on the question you ask. Let's get started. First question, please. Over here to left side. Yes,
hello, my name is Erin Wagnon with Military Officers Association of America, also a proud Army spouse. Really excited to see the licensure reimbursement being implemented and used. However, we did identify a gap that I'm sure you may be aware of spouses moving from overseas to stateside are not eligible to get this reimbursement with the Army. However, in the Navy and Marine Corps and Coast Guard, they have all agreed to allow OCONUS military spouses to be eligible for this. I was told that Army lawyers interpreted the law that said they have to be moving state to state, and so they would not be eligible. And so I was wondering if this is something the Army would reconsider as a policy change to open up that eligibility, or if it would take an act of Congress to clarify that.
Yeah. I think we're going to get some Navy lawyers.
Yeah.
We have one.
We actually have
Jim
one.
McPherson.
Yeah.
Where is he?
Well, you'd have comfort to know that our general counsel's the retired TJAG of the Navy, so we have the backdoor key to their legal department. But we will take a look at that. I mean, there's always second opinions. So there's no reason for us not to address that. I'll take that one on personally. Thank you.
Next question. Come on, everybody.
Can I say
Okay.
something? I want to say something on the licensing too. Is we've had some spouses come forward, and we are a bureaucracy, and they were having some challenges getting their license. The program's in. They're going from CONUS to CONUS. If there's a problem with that, let us know. Okay, because I know where's Tom Siemens? Tom's working that. Sometimes we can be a bureaucracy. Someone didn't sign the right paperwork right. Our intent is with these new programs is if a spouse is having a problem, you reach out to that spouse, you work them through all the details, whatever needs to be done, and you make sure that they get paid right. Is that right, Tom? Is that what you guys are doing?
So we've also delegated the authority.
Microphone.
So we've delegated the authority down to the company commander, validated by the S1s, so it can be processed a lot quicker too.
Okay, because some of these things, again, they've got to do certain things. They can't just, someone has to sign something, or you just can't give money away. But we don't want to make it so bureaucratic that our spouses can't get those type of things. So, Tom, I appreciate you getting on that.
Okay, I have a question here.
Hi.
The stress.
Oh,
go ahead, ma'am.
Regarding childcare, so grateful that when my husband passed away that we received, I think it was 16 free hours per month from CYS, free of charge. And then, it was incredible for me to be able to drop the boys off. Well, I'm wondering if you'd consider when we have terminally ill soldiers, maybe that enter into hospice, providing that early for the family. And, transitioning that over into, the survivor benefit.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Who has that for? Who's got
it,
that
sir.
one here?
We're taking notes here.
Right here? I want to make sure. I don't want to nod because I'm not taking notes. No, I want to make sure. I'm trying to figure out who's doing the work, and I'm going, who's got that? Okay, okay. I know how this stuff works. Okay. It's good being chief.
Carla, that's two.
Okay, we have one from Facebook. Megan Meredith Harless. Current Diddy moves are reimbursed at 95% already. Why can't it be at 100%? And why can't you pay me what you would pay a moving company?
Yeah, I think, there's two pieces to that. One is, we used to do that with meals. Like, we used to have meals. If you went and ate someplace, you had to keep track of every single cent. You had, you ate $2 worth of, whatever. And then we went to per diem, which gave you a certain amount. We haven't figured out what the percentage is, but what I'm saying is rather going away, if you've done a Diddy move, it is very arduous about what you have to do. You have to take your stuff, you have to find the weight. How that all works out makes it very difficult. So it'd be a similar thing where you just get a, we don't know what the number is, but a sweet spot on what they're going to pay. Because most people, not everyone maxes out their weight either. So that, if you do a Diddy move right now, you have to go get all your stuff weighed, and you get weighed at a certain amount, and that's what you get paid for. You don't get the max weight. The other way is if you go to a commercial mover, they pay you, or they get paid for what they weigh. What I'm saying, we haven't figured this out yet, is what's the number? You want to make it the incentive so there's no paperwork. And they get paid, and so.
Yes, sir. Dwayne Gamble, your Army G4, we have both for action. So the last time we did.
So I brought this up, so they're actually working this stuff.
Sir.
So I just haven't figured it out yet, so I'm announcing it anyways. Okay, so.
But for Megan, for the woman who put the question in, the chief's asked us to do two things. One is simplify Diddy moves, and then if you do it yourself, to incentivize it at the appropriate level, to make it an incentive, right?
Right.
To do it yourself and move on to the next duty station. And then at 2 levels, right? And this is what we're working for the chief, is at 1 level to simplify it at some percentage less than 100, but no questions asked as we have matured from keep every receipt to a per diem type payment. And then the second level, if you want to dot every I, cross every T, to incentivize that at a full 100% of what we would pay a moving company.
Right.
So the initiative, the reform measure that we're working involves both.
Great. Thanks, General Gamble. Next question.
So I want to just read that back to make it confirm. You do the full Diddy now, we're going to 100%, right? But you got to do all the paperwork, you got to go get weighed, you got to do all that stuff, and people, and there's inspectors kind of checking to make sure that you did what you need to do. Or there's some other percentage that's less than that, that you just, you know, get a check. You get your dislocation allowance and you get a check, you fill out a piece of paper, it's real easy, and you get a big old check, and then you go do what you need to do.
But today, sir, it's not 100%.
No, I know, but that's why we're changing policy, right? That's right. Well, the Secretary's going to change policy, I think.
Check. Working to 100%. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Teresa. I'm from Fort Knox. I have two parts. One is I'm a mother of an active duty soldier and a veteran, and a wife of an active duty soldier. And one of the things I noticed when they went through MEPS is there was no mention of family programs. There's a mention of Red Cross and how to get your messages. But I believe if we start back, since I'm also an FRSA, is my employment, is we need to start back at MEPS to start encouraging our soldiers to understand the importance of having the family readiness present. Our soldiers that are single, their families are our families away from home, and we need to be able to encourage them to get involved early on instead of waiting till their first duty station to hear something about it, and then a year later, I didn't know, because I hear that a lot, unfortunately. So that's one point. And then the second one is with CPAC. When we are put into the system, from post to post, it is different. OCONUS and CONUS, you register there, you don't register, you have to do it online now. There's so many different variations of that. Once the job is offered, you can sit in a queue, and I have a girlfriend who sat in there right now for 8 months. I sat in there for several weeks until I called and had to push it through the system. Is there a way to make that a little bit faster? Because it's translating to our families into financial readiness, and we need to be able to give them that stability.
Okay, so who wants to take the MEPS? Tom, you want to take the MEPS question just to make sure we...
We'll take that on. I'm not sure MEPS is actually the right place. Their job is to screen the soldier coming in, but I agree with you. In the entrance process, whether it's by the recruiter, basic training, someplace along the line we need to inform of the medical entitlements and that kind of thing that the family members are. So we'll take that on, work with TRADOC and figure out where the right place to insert it. I've got Carol Burton, who's the Director of CHARA, to talk to the second one.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This CPAC's report to me, so thank you for that question. The program that you're referring to, I think, is the Priority Placement Program, and if I'm getting your question wrong, please correct me. But we changed that process specifically for the reason that you identified. And now spouses have more control over their career, and they actually can apply for vacancies rather than sitting in a queue. Does that answer your question, or am I perhaps misunderstanding your question, ma'am?
It does answer my question, but in the big picture, it's not happening. We're still sitting in the queue for several months.
Okay.
And so people are referring themselves, and then you get into the system. I was referred, I'll use myself as example, I was referred the day before Thanksgiving 2 years ago. After the second, almost into the third week, I had to call and say, hey, did I get an offer? They said, oh yes, it's been sitting here for a couple weeks. Then they decided to push it through since I had all my other stuff in order. But it took me to do that. A new spouse does not know to do that. A new spouse does not know their rights. And that's where obviously education's a part of that, but they're not gonna call CPAC as their first time in the GS system to do that. And that's our career from post to post.
Sure, good. Thank you for that feedback. I think you're talking about the onboarding process with things like security clearance and all that. Yeah, thank you for that feedback. We'll look into that and make sure that process works a little bit smoother. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things, and especially for more senior spouses, that, you know, again, we're a large bureaucracy, and you know the policy is there to take care of those type issues, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So we've got to have mechanisms to get it back to the right level, so we can fix those type things. Okay.
Yeah, and we are working on it. I'll just give you one example. Previously, for your security clearance, if you had required a secret clearance, we had to wait until the adjudication came back. But now you can onboard with just a fingerprint check, and that usually comes back in 24 hours. So we have implemented some initiatives to try and onboard people faster, but I'll specifically look at the Fort Knox issue. Thanks.
Do we have any capability for them, you know, kind of like Uber, you know where your thing is, you know, when you're kind of, I mean, no, I'm serious. As we move into the information age, some of our processes are agricultural age, some are industrial age, as we move into the information age. So someone just go online and say, hey, you know, where's my stuff, you know?
Yeah. Sir, we have limited automation. If you come to the Civilian Talent Management Forum tomorrow, I'll actually talk a little bit about that and some of the automation initiatives that we're working on. You can see in the system partially where you're at in the application process, but you can't see, for example, if you're pending a drug test or security clearance. The manager can, but you as an applicant cannot. And we need that automation enhancement.
Yeah, that's just for all. If you've heard us, the Secretary and I talk about, we can't be an industrial age Army in the information age. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change our processes, which are very slow, linear, industrial age processes that people, kind of have to work hard to get through. So that's what the future is, and we got to help you get there.
Yes, absolutely.
That's on us. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
One more
yes,
point
Major.
About the first question about family programs. We also have to do better with how we in-process and out-process folks. No matter what the organization where you're at, some of that sponsorship, sometimes we think sponsorship, that's just new soldiers into the Army. It's actually new families and all their families, not just the spouse, but the extended family. So when we in-process a family into the Army family, we have to my mic's not on? It's not my fault.
Yeah.
It's more torture with the chair, but okay. It's the sponsorship. We got to do better with that, and it's in processing, out processing. No matter what the organization, as you move from location to location, there's an out processing piece. We got to sponsor you into the new unit, but we also have to out sponsor you as you move to another location, and it's everything. And letting those family programs be aware of to the spouses. That's what we have to do. We got to do better with that, and I've got sponsorship. I was tagged with that like day one. Got it.
That's right. Be the sponsor you wish you had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, next question from Facebook, Kyle and Christian Copenhaver. Why not make it a 4-year minimum at each duty station for stability for families and less PCS moves? What do you think?
I think it's a good idea.
I like it.
What do you think, G1?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good idea.
All right. Make it so.
Okay. That was easy.
From the audience.
Next.
From the audience. If not, I have another Facebook.
No, let me talk about that, though. That's part of this talent management system is I don't see why people can't stay 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. Now, there's some things you have to do for career development, and there's certain areas where you're better off doing that. But part of the future that we see with the talent management system is we do look at your preferences, which is kind of blasphemous in the Army, where you want to go and what you want to do. But if we can accommodate that, why shouldn't we? It's getting out of the industrial age personnel management system where everyone moves at 3 years. That's just the way we do it, because that's the way we've always done it. Rather than going, well, hey, I want to stay here and do this, this, and this. Okay, stay 5, stay 6, stay 12. And when you come from battalion command, you go to a BCAP and you can try out, see how good you are. All right.
Okay, the next question, Facebook, is from Meredith Harless. In regards to PCSing and holding movers accountable, what is the plan for better background checks to ensure our families are safe in their homes to prevent an incident like what happened with the home invasion by the moving crew in Germany?
Yeah, why don't you?
Major Russell,
we have
you
someone
spoke to that earlier today. Would you like to talk to that again,
yeah.
sir?
I think so.
Major General Russell.
So, good question, and thank you, Ms. Harless. We spoke to that a little bit earlier at an earlier family forum. So first of all, let me just say this. If you are ever in a move and you feel threatened, A, call the police or MPs. That's first thing. Number two, a couple of things that we're going to try to get after is, A, hold the movers accountable based on the program that we're trying to institute under U.S. Transcom's leadership, where we hold a central organization accountable for who they hire, for how they come and pick up your household goods, and the actions there. Number two, we've also hired 25 new inspectors, 6 spouses at Fort Hood, and they are also helping us with this process. Number three, we're training, standardizing, and we have a checklist for the inspectors that are coming to your locations when you're having household goods taken. That is also at a 50%, no less than 50% for all the household goods. And under AMC's leadership, we're going to try to push for even higher percentages based on what's going on that post-campus station. And then the final piece of that is, as we look at the overall moving from May through August, which is the surge period, there is a lot going on during that time. All of our families are moving. We have shortages in movers, trucks, and things of that nature. We're going to continue to try to work with how we put orders in soldiers' hands so that possibly you too may have an opportunity, along with personal moves, maybe pick your own movers. You know, pick 3 movers, submit that to your ITO, and then maybe you can get those people to move your own stuff based on your selection process. And then finally, those surveys that we asked you to do, we actually really look at them and we read those. And then we take those, rank order these moving companies in the DPS process, and then you can go in and see who is the best to the worst. And then if you have an issue with somebody who shows up, or you've been assigned somebody who was at the lower tier, let us know, and we will reassign you somebody else. So those are just some of the things we're trying to work. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, General Russell. Question to the left over here.
I'm Candy Martin, Soldier for Life. And after I retired, I was on the East Coast, and when I got ready to retire, I moved to Texas. During that terminal leave process, I was ineligible to transfer my TRICARE enrollment from the East region down to the whatever the Texas region is, the South region. And as an active duty service member at the time, I was only eligible to be enrolled in TRICARE where my unit of assignment was, which was on the East Coast. They would not transfer me. The only health care that I could get during those terminal leave time was to go to an emergency room. I'm not the only one that this affects. I know of 2 other people that this has happened to, and it's really a problem when you get ready to make that final PCS move and that final ETS.
Okay. OTSG, MedCon.
Scott, who's got that for?
General Dingle.
So I don't own the TRICARE program. However, I can address your problem directly. So if you can link with me afterward, TRICARE is undergoing a tremendous overhaul right now. What the outcomes of what the TRICARE system is going to be at the OSD DHA level. However, we Army do have a voice, and so as I hear the concerns, we are taking them to the DHA, to OSD as they implement the new TRICARE plan. So after this, I'll make sure I get your specific issue and make sure that we bring that to the table also to get it addressed at the next level.
Thank you, General Dingle. One more question over here on the left.
Yes. Hello. My name is Patty Bear, and I'm with AUSA. But I'm asking this question as a private citizen, not as AUSA. I started a group online, a closed group online called Military Caregivers and Cancer Warriors. And I did this because of experience that I had seeing many military families that had cancer patients going through treatment. We have currently about 100 people in this closed group. And many of the caregivers have mentioned to me that it's very difficult to care for someone that's going through chemotherapy or cancer treatment. And they put everything that they have into this to care for this soldier or family member. But there isn't a resource or a way for someone to care for them. All of the appointments, everything is centered around that patient, but that caregiver that's going through an enormous amount of stress is also suffering physically as well. I'm wondering if there is any way that we can incorporate caring or checking in with a caregiver when we're also caring for a cancer patient.
General Dingle. Hold on, microphone. He's bringing it.
A great question. I know that we're doing a lot of behavioral health, looking at the families as its entirety to include the children. But a great point that you have raised. Dennis Sarmiento, my behavioral health specialist, is he in here? Dennis, you want to talk to any additional resources that we could use in the meantime, but we will take a look at that. Great point, great recommendation. Dennis, anything to add?
Yes, sir. Ma'am, again, thank you for representing the needs of so many that are devoting time to those that have served, and I'm sorry that you have to go through that, or the experience that your family's experienced. With regards to resources, the Army does have a child and family behavioral health system, Within the behavioral health system of care that the Army has created over the last 8 years, we've established a number of standardized programs. So regardless if you're CONUS sites, that we have resources at the Army MTFs. Now, I can't say that a recent report to Congress, the Army system of care has been identified as a model for the MHS. And so part of that is our child and family behavioral health system. So I would reach out. We can sit down after this and reach out and discuss what other options are available to support those family members.
And then, Chief, the only thing to add is just from a medical perspective, the Chief says, again, people are our greatest, most important, priority. You also have a voice. And so when it comes to the medical system, regardless of any of the transitions or reform, you have a voice. And as you raise those voices, the thing that we are committing to you is making sure that we are addressing those issues, but we have to hear your voice, and we appreciate your voice, and we'll get after it.
Thank you, General Dingle. Facebook question from Daniel Torres. He's a National Guardsman, and he wanted to know if he goes on active duty, his wife is a registered nurse, would she be entitled to having her fees for her license reimbursed, as she would more likely have to bring it from state to state, and requirements vary?
I think I can help. I think the answer is yes. The PCS orders from one state to another is the factor that allows you to get reimbursement for your licensing from state to state. And it applies to active, guard, and reserves.
Thank you. Question on the left side, right side.
Hello, I'm Corey Tess with the Military Officers Association. And something that you mentioned on the fact sheet is looking at the OCONUS challenges for spouses specifically, and something that's being explored is the ability to have a home business from an APO. What other things are being looked at to help focus on spouses that are OCONUS?
D, OCONUS home-based business for spouses? OCONUS home-based business.
Home-based, I know we've done a lot for CONUS. I don't know where we're at.
There is a joint service working group addressing OCONUS, home-based business, and employment in general. We know that there are challenges with using the APO addresses. We know that there are challenges and some prohibitive language in the status of forces agreements. We're recognizing what those challenges are, and we're now in the phase of making recommendations to senior leaders on policies perhaps that need to change or some resources that need to be invested. We are aware, we're working on it, but we don't have all the solutions yet.
So we have that for action. Next question. Right here in the middle, left.
Good afternoon, sir. Ms. Garcia Kelly. I'm a retiree spouse, also a DA civilian, and a mother to a TRICARE young adult. Now, when we go to hospitals or MTFs here, aside from going to patient advocate where my son has experienced discrimination and intimidation from providers, what are other options available to us that this can be addressed? Thank you.
Come to the Surgeon General, who's right here, after this meeting, and it will get addressed. Do you get the name, Scott? You get, okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we will get that addressed at the highest levels.
Question.
Hi, Karen Rudicelli with the National Military Family Association. I work on healthcare issues for our association, and we're all tracking very carefully some of the transition issues that you mentioned. The fact that the MTFs are transitioning to DHA administration, as well as the transformation of the direct care system that is starting to go underway. It's my understanding that the intent is that patients, family members, beneficiaries, retirees, and service members will not really see the changes. The intent is that if anything, we'll see improvements at military hospitals and clinics. But it does seem like a very heavy lift, and we're concerned that if if patients start to experience problems, the problem resolution process is not very well understood. The patient advocate was just mentioned. That I would say there's fairly low awareness of the patient advocate among military families. But we're also, I appreciate the fact that you're interested in hearing about these problems. I'm just not sure that even I, after working on healthcare issues for our association for 6 years, really understand where to direct families if they do experience these problems, and we want to raise them so that you folks understand what's happening too. And I'm wondering what suggestions you have for that.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Scott, but I mean, where we're at is, we're trying to understand. We've been told the same type things, hey, better care at less cost, all these wonderful accolades, and I'm kind of like Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. And I want to see those type things and make sure that's happening. And our mechanism is the reason we, our Surgeon General, he may not own them. Just like with TRICARE, but that's the right level. We can get to the right level of leadership or come to the Secretary or myself and get after these issues. So Scott, you want to take a shot at that?
In addition, the systems will not change. One thing I think that everyone should understand is that we think of as we and them, as in Army, DHA. Well, we are them. That same commander, that's wearing that Army uniform is still in charge. And he's working for that senior commander on that post-camper station. And so his focus and concern to make sure that we're delivering quality health care to the beneficiaries is still there. So DHA is going to come in and they're going to take authority, direction, and control, implement policies to standardize throughout the military health system, but that commander of that MTF is still responsible, and he's going to make sure, one, that is sustained. In addition to that, as we start the transition of those medical treatment facilities, the regional health command is still there. That intermediate management organization is still providing that oversight, but on the ground at the MTF, the patient advocate, the commander, you can hit me direct. We are still listening and will ensure that any concerns are addressed. And so with DHA, we'll have that policy oversight, but that implementation is that same Army commander under that same station or senior commander at the installation. And so we are watching it very closely also.
Thank you, General Dingle. Yes.
Hi, thank you. I'm Noreen O'Neill. I'm with the Military Family Advisory Network, and I am an Army spouse and an Army mother-in-law. So thank you for having me today, and thank you guys for everybody that you do for the Army and our future families. My quick question is, when can we expect a finalized tenant Bill of Rights?
I'll take that. Take that to Secretary. Policy, over to Mr. Secretary.
So we, between we're this framework for that tenant Bill of Rights, we're doing it with the Navy and the Department of the Air Force. We think we have agreement with the RCI partners. What we want to do is, once the National Defense Authorization Act with Congress is passed, we're going to make sure that all lines up so that we can codify that into law. So we had breakfast with 376 congressional staff this morning, and we're working pretty hard on that, try to get the NDAA passed as well as the budget. So I'm a pragmatist, but I think we can get that done this fall.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have 5 minutes left. We've got time for one last question. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Steve Shanley. I'm a Compo 3 spouse, actually. It's obvious that Compos 2 and 3, the soldiers and family members, face some unique challenges. I was wondering what initiatives might be being considered in those arenas.
Thank you so much. I'm Major General A.C. Roper, Deputy Commanding General of the Army Reserve. And so the biggest thing that we're doing to get after that is we are now transitioning from a centrally developed model to a regionally developed model. Why is that? Because two of the biggest issues facing Army Reserve soldiers is the fact that we have this great geographic dispersion, and second, we have isolation because they're not on a base. So to get after that, we're powering down the services almost to the zip code level so that we can take the services, the support, the solutions closer to those family members. Because in the Army Reserve especially, Lieutenant General Luckett commands the whole Army Reserve Command, so it's not uncommon to have a soldier living in Alabama who is actually serving in Salt Lake City, Utah. That's me. That's what I did. And so my family in Alabama needed services unlike those in Utah. So taking it down to the zip code level, where it's regionally based, takes the answers, the solutions, the processes, the services closer to the family members. And so that's the number one thing that we're getting after, because the family members are our VIPs. Thank you.
Okay, one more question. Patty tells me we got a little more time. One more question.
You get one back there. I can see you.
Hi, my name is Katrina Smith, and I have a son who has sickle beta thalassemia, and it's a debilitating blood condition that causes severe pain crises. And I understand that legislation and new regulations have been incorporated to combat the opioid epidemic. However, we have been caught in the middle as far as him getting pain medication when he goes to appointments, or not appointments, when he goes to the emergency room. Sometimes they only give him enough medication to combat his pain crisis at the time, and will not refill his prescription until he's able to go see his physician. And so my question is, or my comment is, that I want to bring awareness to the people who are like me, who are caught in this middle of this opioid crisis, to where our family members need medication, but they're being limited the access to the main pain medication. So is there a way that they can be flagged in the system so that we are not feeling like we're dehumanized, being ostracized, feeling like we're abusers because they need this pain medication?
First, my apology. Comment heard, well received, and I will get your specific information to make sure not just yours, but other families in that same conditions are also addressed, and we'll jump on it.
Sir, we have one more to your right.
Okay.
Hi, Joyce Razor, Army retiree spouse and formerly with National Military Family Association. Great panel this morning in terms of interest about housing and PCS moves. One question for you as leaders. We've heard from leaders that there were lessons learned about the housing problems that have surfaced this year. I'd like for you as leaders to talk about how you're going to apply those lessons to other examples of, quote, privatization, namely, and the first one that comes to mind is the transition on PCS moves to a system where you have a contractor running the PCS move process. So what lessons would you like to convey to the people who are working that process so that we avoid the problems we had with housing privatization?
I'll go first.
Go first, yeah, okay.
In the springtime, when a lot of this all bubbled to the surface to us, and went out and conducted inspections, if you will. I went to Fort Jackson, I went to Fort Eustis, and realized that we just essentially outsourced it. We reduced the resources and abdicated responsibility of something very simple. So it's, when I came home and made my assessment to Secretary Esper and General Milley, it was I pointed the thumb more so than pointing a finger. So in a business-to-business type of relationship, it's very similar to my job with the Congress. I got to cross that river all the time. I got to talk to them. It's as much about the communication, about the relationship. You can put a lot of policies in place and you can float resources, but it's a leadership issue. And so I think that I'll continue to exhibit the right behaviors, meet with these CEOs, we'll drive towards solutions to get to the outcomes. But when you're not engaged like that, you can't put together the right metrics for incentive award fees so you can reward the right performance. You don't have commanders at the street level that are empowered to do the right things. Along with building a recapitalization schedule to rebuild the homes and make the right investments in these assets and monitor the depreciation of the assets over time. So it was a leadership issue. It had gone on for far too long, but we're just going to exhibit the right behaviors and engage on a daily basis.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, you know, we're a military organization. We're not a private company. And, you know, the leadership sitting here, we're responsible and accountable for all our soldiers and families. And that's very, very different than Walmart or IBM. I don't know if the CEO or the chairman of Walmart is sitting in front of their families going, how are your moves going? How is your housing? How is your medical care or those type things? We have that responsibility. We own that responsibility. That's what makes us different. So the two lessons I learned, I'll take privatized housing. When privatized housing came into place, I was a commander at Fort Campbell. I thought it was wonderful. I saw these new houses come in. Don't talk to my wife, but we lived in, we were lieutenant colonels, with the mold and all that, blowing the. Did we turn a loop? Did the kids have the turn a loop stench? No, but anyways, I mean, there were those type. So when we first saw that, and new housing came in, we said, "Wow, we finally got this right. We're doing it wonderful." But we took our eye off the ball, quite frankly. We saw these new houses going up, and a lot of the new housing wasn't built to code and to construction, so we kind of fell off at that. The work orders weren't getting done. And because we kind of walked away from it, we weren't in checking it, it just wasn't getting done. So the lessons learned from me is we've got to keep the chain of command involved in that. They need to understand that they're responsible. They're responsible for the barracks where our soldiers live. They're responsible for the housing. That's just good leadership in caring for people. And then you've got to you got to have checks and balances that are making sure that people that we're actually paying to deliver quality housing, paying to deliver quality moves, paying to deliver quality health care or child care are actually doing that, or they're not getting paid. The second thing is we got to have feedback loops. Right now we have commanders doing these town halls quarterly, so people that are having problems, at least they can come and they can get it to the right level of leadership. But there's surveys that people actually read. And so we have to do is make sure that we have feedback loops in place. So when things go wrong, we're checking it. We put out a new policy, like the licensing. We got to have feedback loops that check and say, hey, wait a minute, I didn't get paid, or we're watching this program and 5 spouses or 50% of the spouses having a problem getting the right piece of paper signed. And rather than just sending it back to them, you call them up, you work through the system, you get it set so they're actually getting what they need to do. So when I look at these big 5 here, these are things that are our level. And the reason we're putting it at this level because we want commanders at every level to be taking care of these things. There's some family programs, maybe like skiing in the Alps, they probably are not going to get our attention, but we want to make sure that these big 5 that are essential to our units are being taken care of. Go ahead, Submit.
I really want to apologize. This is actually encompasses a lot more than just housing.
Yeah.
You name it, but not only the secretary says leadership, but you actually have to take some action. Maybe you got to put down the cell phone, look people in the eye, and actually talk to them. And then you don't just hand them off to somebody else. You actually walk them to that area and say, I'm going to stand here with my person, whether that's a PCS move, it's a housing move or something. Don't go, yeah, I know you did that, but it's not working out well for you. Well, let me know how it goes. No. You need to actually do something and say something and go, well, that's not right. I don't know the solution, but I'm going to take you over to the platoon sergeant, and if he doesn't know, I'm going to take you to the company commander, the battalion commander, and if I have to, I'm going to go to the division commander because we're going to fix this. Whatever this is. And we can't just, okay, it's an app. That doesn't actually fix it all. You're going to actually have to figure out what's going on with your folks. It doesn't matter if it's housing, it's barracks, it's TRICARE, it's medical. You know your people, And most of the time, somebody knows it. Somebody knew, and I saw it, and they didn't take an action. And we got to get all of us involved at the ground level to actually not just identify it and go, yep, that's terrible. And then we got to take it and not give up and say we're going to keep pushing this to the appropriate level until we get the right answer. A lot of times when it gets to the right people, the senior mission commander goes, oh yeah, we're going to fix that. We're going to move out. You're going to get this. You're going to go fix the house, and it's going to get done. We got to have the sergeant has got to have the same. They're empowered. We just got to we got to teach them how to do that. And I'll give you a quick story. I was talking to this NCO. He's a young sergeant, and he heard me talk about this all the time, about the NCO can do this. And he had a soldier that couldn't get the right house. He said, and I heard the sergeant major, I heard you talk to it, and I said, I'm not going to take this, and you're going to give him a new house. He's just a sergeant. He said, but Sergeant Major, it really worked. I didn't have to call you or anything. He worked directly for me. He goes, I just did it. And he was so proud of that moment. We actually have to talk to our junior leaders about those cases and how great it is and that they can do it. Sometimes it doesn't take, the general officer to do it. It just takes a sergeant who's willing to say, this isn't right and we need to fix it.
Cool.
How about Sergeant Major? All right. Now back in.
Okay. One more Facebook question. As Army military treatment facilities transfer to the Defense Health Agency, can we please get your commitment to us that there will be no detriment to the quality or access to care?
Yeah, I mean, mine.
Yes,
my commitment.
the Army senior leadership and General Dingell have said yes.
But let me say something on that. We need some help getting feedback on that, and we got to make. This gets back to we need to check, and we need to have feedback loops because quite frankly, a lot of times we get surveys at our level. We get these even with housing. We have 85, 90% of the people, 91% of the people are really happy with their housing, and people go, well, that's an A- or an A. But 9%, and when you're looking at 9% of a million, that's a lot of people that are not happy with what's going on. So when we look at this stuff, we want to know, and so please fill out the surveys. Please take advantage of using the chain of command to get that. And if you can't get the answer, and people are too busy, we're not too busy.
Okay. Patty, is that it? Is that the time? We good? Say again? Okay, all right. Then I was misinformed. We still have time. More questions? Any more questions? Yes, ma'am. He'll bring the mic to you.
Good afternoon, sir. Different hat now. Department of Army Civilian. And with the transformation or transition for military healthcare system, I work for Regional Health Command Atlantic. So some of the positions that I see in USA Jobs, and maybe this is for G1, looking at some postings where can relocation costs be added to that, because we've moved 3 times on our own dime and the pot's getting dry this time. So if some of the positions that are comparable to what my current position are now, but it doesn't include relocation costs, and also for to add sponsorship to civilians as well. Thank you so much.
Okay. Where's CPAC?
Patty, you got that one?
Can you take that one?
Yeah, ma'am, as I understood your question, you wanted to know if PCS costs could be included for civilian moves, and sometimes they are. So yeah, sometimes they are not. It depends on the type of position and the funding that the command has. So it does vary, I agree with you. It's a funding issue.
Yeah, but if we're going to ask them to move, we ought to be taking a look at how we take care of that, I believe.
Yes, yes, sir. If it's a management-directed move, the Army will pay the PCS cost for a civilian.
What if their job is going away because of? You're asking because of restructure. That's what you're talking about, because we're doing a restructure, right? You're at a regional health agency that's being restructured, and they're going to go to some type of geographic regional type. I think that's what you're talking about, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
That's what I'm talking about
yeah,
right
so
now.
her-
She's saying if the synergies are such that the job goes away and now she goes for
Yeah,
a
what
move.
she's saying, she's not just deciding, hey, I
Yes.
want to go to California or something like that on her own. What she's saying is, hey, I've been working here, I'm a good employee, I want to stay with the government, but my job's going away. I'm going to compete for another job, but I don't want to pay to go to another place. So we don't take care of that?
Yes, we do, sir. I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. Thank you
Okay.
for that clarification.
So she's shaking her head. So what I'd like
Yes.
to do after this meeting, you all link
Yes.
up and
Yeah,
see
come-
if we
come
get
see
that.
us.
Roger that,
She's got a
sir.
bunch
Thank
of
you so
meetings.
much.
You got all these people.
Yeah.
You got a
Yeah.
lot.
Thank you
We're
so
gonna-
much,
we're gonna
sir.
get you
Yeah,
squared
Peter
away.
Hassett, raise your hand. Come talk to Peter.
All right.
I apologize, I misunderstood your question.
Okay, going to Facebook. CB Weathers. Are senior leaders willing to help advocate for military spouses who are trying to become TRICARE providers, having a simple box check on applications to expedite paperwork the way the state boards do?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. The secretary has said yes. It is so. Question from the audience.
Sir, I'll speak of a personal experience and then kind of tie it back to the regulation. About a year ago, I moved here to the Capital Region. I rented from a civilian homeowner, a prior service Navy veteran, off post. And his house was foreclosed on, was a crappy process. In consulting with the JAG, I was referred to GIPSO to do a non-funded move. And so there's this requirement of an eviction notice. So they said once the process is near completion, you'll get an eviction notice from the trustee of the home or possibly the new owner after it auctions. That's kind of a limbo situation to live in. So I waited and I waited and I waited. And then when the time came, I got a letter that said I was now in a month-to-month lease in accordance with Virginia state law that says that I'm now in a month-to-month lease, and then I get notified that in another month I have to be gone. So the Virginia law has changed, much like as other states, that says that you will no longer be evicted within the state. They've changed the state law. But our regulation currently says you have to have an eviction notice. This move cost me $5,000 out of my pocket. I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried about the soldiers that may be in the same situation out there, and there's no room for help.
Well, first of all, I'm worried about you.
General Risch, you wanna-
As far as that goes. So what is the legal mechanism that allows us to take a look? Okay.
So I've got my subject matter expert here, Ms. Melissa Halsey. We got your question beforehand. We were able to research it. There are changes, but part of your question also was, do we keep up with the changes in the law in each of the 54 states and territories? And yes, we do. That's where we get feedback again. I think the message that we've gotten is if the senior leadership gets feedback, then we can engage with Congress on statutory changes, which has actually happened here. We can make regulatory changes as well, too. But in specific response to your question, I think you'll be happy with the answer that we've got. So, Melissa, if I can turn it over to you, if we can, and she'll give you a more direct answer.
And yes, the gentleman's right. There is quite a patchwork of laws that govern foreclosure. And as a tenant living in a foreclosed property, there are certain notices that you receive that are different than the owner of the foreclosed property. So there is now a federal law that says you cannot be evicted from a foreclosed property. You get, and I think you experienced this, sir, where you were given a certain amount of time, up to 90 days, at least 90 days before the new owner of the foreclosed property can remove you or evict you from the property. That should be able to work in conjunction with the funded Army move that says if you are a tenant in a home that is foreclosed upon, the Army will fund that move. It sounds like in your individual case, you were given a certain amount of time, and that actually kind of worked to your detriment because you probably wanted to move, but did not have the accurate paperwork according to the transportation office to fund that move. So that does sound like an instance where the regulation and the policy did not catch up with the change in federal law. So I can work with you kind of directly to see if there would be an exception to policy, but that is generally how it works, where if you are evicted, then as a tenant, you should be entitled to an Army-funded move.
Yeah, so what level is the exception to policy at?
Sir, we'll have to look into that, probably. I'll have to look into that, sir.
So just to clarify,
we're trying to get your money here. Hold a second here. Okay? Just hang with it, okay?
It's not about
try to help you out, okay? Just see if we get this thing down, okay?
So, I just, if you would see me afterwards, I'll be right up here, and we'll sort it out.
Just to clarify, we were never evicted. The home is still in foreclosure, right? But we've been from foreclosure, and then this gets weird with the law. So then he put it in bankruptcy to avoid foreclosure. So then we were in limbo, and then he stopped repairs on the home, right? And then we got water leaks. And then once it's in foreclosure, my property manager is no longer obligated by law to the home or me. So now I have to reach the homeowner, who now says, well, I don't have a contract with you. And so I was never, I moved out because I was in all of this limbo. We are not protecting our soldiers in these instances with waiting for all of this.
Hey, General Gamble, you got max latitude to try to get a policy to simplify, to get people out of those situations. So we can have a productive employee, right? Okay.
I got a fraction, Mr. Secretary.
All right, here we go. There we go. We got that thing.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was the last question subsequent to any final comments by Mr. Secretary-Chief for the SMA.
Well, I learned a lot. So you saw a lot of listening there because this is as important as anything we do. If you look at the 5 priorities that the chief laid out, in particular with housing, we clearly have better management. We're clearly we're much more aggressive on this push. But one thing in particular, General Perna is coming back to our leadership team about a plan to really get us on the path out. And that may require more funding. And what that'll do is essentially, we look at that plan, we'll have to work with the companies to essentially restructure the contract. And if necessary, we'll go down that path and we'll do it. Because we have to get better quality of life on our installations for all our families. With the healthcare, that's a very complex problem that we're working in the department because it is merging all of the services together. So to the chief's point earlier, be aggressive and be with your feedback on the type of health care you're receiving, because it's unacceptable if you're not getting the best we can provide. On the youth services issue, it is about capacity. We're working very hard to increase capacity, but also to simplify the process to obtaining it. On spousal employment, again, we need policies that are going to simplify matters for you to make those changes when you're going from state to state or coming from Oconus. We've made the commitment to do that. And on the PCS moves as well, General McConville's been making policy all afternoon here. So we're on our way. We're on our way. But we're committed to doing better. And thank you for this opportunity, Chief.
No, thank you, Secretary. And, I can tell you we have a secretary that's really committed to soldiers and families, and he is the one who makes the policy, and he is willing to change and make things work. And again, as we put out some of the things we've fixed already with policy, but they just take time to get down to the families. And sometimes what seems like it works at our level so well, by the time it gets down, it doesn't work. And there's an exception to every policy to take care of. I mean, that's kind of where we're at. If you got a problem, I mean, there's no way we expect people to live with, in bad housing and get evicted and not have, we ought to be able to fix those type things. And we ought to be able to fix it for everybody with our soldiers. So, for the leaders out there, be looking for those instances and get them up to you. We got a lot of generals and sergeant majors sitting in this room. We like them solved at the lowest level, but get them up to the right level where people have the authorities to fix it. And if you can't get it up, get it up to us, and we will fix it, okay? So thank you. Sergeant Major, over to you. Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to say, as the newest member of this team, I'm really proud to be a part of this team, and I love the quality of life issues, because this is about taking care of soldiers, and that's why I love being a soldier, because we take care of our soldiers. But the last thing is that it doesn't just take this forum, just for everybody. There are forums at every level. One of those is the AFAP. And when we sometimes don't take the forums that we have and we don't use them, but most of these things in here are great AFAP issues, and you have a voice. We will listen. We go line by line of every AFAP issue. If it comes up to the Department, that's a hard one. The hard ones, the Department of the Army is going to do the hard ones, because if they were easy, they would already been solved. So those AFAP issues that come up, and I'm really glad the Chief's making a lot of policy today, is that, those are the hard ones that have to come out of the Department of the Army. You have a voice, you have to use the voice, and I think one of those great resources is always going to be the AFAP issues as they come up. And some of those are open for a long time because they're really hard. And it may not just be policy at the Army level, it's DOD. And we're gonna work those, and we keep looking at them over and over and over, and we're not gonna give up.
So, as someone who's been listening to forums for quite a while, I hear and feel the commitment. Thank you so much. I really do. And so this is the end of our 2019 Military Family Forum series. To our audience members, both in-house and online, thank you for joining us. It means the world to us, and hearing your voice is incredibly important. I want to also thank Secretary McCarthy, General McConville, Sergeant Major of the Army Grinston, for joining us here today, and for all that you do for Army families, and for all that you're going to do for all Army families. So thank you for that. To the senior spouses and distinguished guests, thank you for your support and encouragement. To the AUSA and Army staff that supported these forums, especially Thea Green and Larry Gilchrist. I wish you could have seen the work that went behind this, and it was incredible. So thank you so much. None of this planning happens in a vacuum. Thank you to the Planning Committee led by Army G9, with assistance from AMC, MCOM, TRADOC, FORCECOM, MEDCOM, the Army National Guard, the Army Reserve, and other members of the Army staff. You are truly a team of teams. See you all next year in 2020. We will all be here, and we really would love to see you back. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You were great.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.